Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari
Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari.
Jai Shri Shri Radha Madhav ki
Jai.
Jai Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Mai ki
Jai.
Jai Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Jai Srila Gurudev ki
Jai.
Nitai Gaura Premanande
Hari.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya So today we read from chapter 9, text 30. Chapter 9, text 30. Abhichet suduracharo
Abhijit Suduracharo
Bhajate mamananyabha
Jajate Mamananyama
Sadhur eva samantabhyah
Sadhureva Samantavya
Samyak vyavasito hi saha
Samyagyavasito Hisa
Abhichet suduracharo
Abhijit Suduracharo
Bhajate mamananyabha
Jajate Mamananyama
Sadhureva samantabhyah
Sadhureva Samantavya
Samyak vyavasito hi saha
Samyagyavasito Hisa
Abhichet suduracharo
Abhijit Suduracharo
Bhajante mamananyabha
Jajate Mamananyama
Sadhureva samantavyah
Sadhureva Samantavya
Samyak vyavasito hi saha
Samyagyavasito Hisa
Prabhus
Abhijit Suduracharo Bhajate Mamananyama Sadhureva Samantavya Samyagyavasito Hisa Abhijit Suduracharo Bhajate Mamananyama Sadhureva Samantavya Samyagyavasito Hisa Abhijit Suduracharo Bhajate Mamananyama Sadhureva Samantavya Samyagyavasito Hisa
Mataji's
Abhijit Suduracharo
Bhajate mamananyabha Sadhureva samantavyah Samyak vyavasito hi saha Abhichet suduracharo Bhajate mamananyabha Sadhureva samantavyah
Samyagyavasito Hisa
Api, even, Chet, if, Sudurachara, one committing
One committing
the most abominable action,
the most abominable action
Bhajate,
Bhajate
is engaged
is engaged
in devotional service. Mam, unto me,
unto me
Ananya Bhak,
Ananyava
without deviation,
without deviation
Sadhu,
Sadhu
a saint,
saint,
Eva,
Eva,
certainly,
certainly,
Saha,
Saha,
he,
he,
Mantavyaha,
Mantavya
is to be considered,
is to be considered
Samyak,
Samya
completely,
completely
Vyavasitaha,
Vyavasita
situated in determination.
situated in
He,
determination
certainly,
certainly
Saha,
Saha,
he, Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Please repeat the translation. Even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination. Please hear the purport. The word Sudurachara used in this verse is very significant, and we should understand it properly. When a living entity is conditioned, he has two kinds of activities. One is conditional, the other is constitutional. As for protecting the body or abiding by the rules of society and state, certainly there are different activities, even for the devotees, in connection with the conditional life. And such activities are called conditional. Besides these, the living entity who is fully conscious of his spiritual nature and is engaged in Krishna consciousness or the devotional service of the Lord has activities which are called transcendental. Such activities are performed in his constitutional position, and they are technically called devotional service. Now, in the conditioned state, sometimes devotional service and the conditional service in relation to the body will parallel one another. But then again, sometimes these activities become opposed to one another. As far as possible, a devotee is very cautious so that he does not do anything that could disrupt his wholesome condition. I'll read that again. As far as possible, a devotee is very cautious so that he does not do anything that could disrupt his wholesome condition. He knows that perfection in his activities depends on his progressive realization of Krishna consciousness. Sometimes, however, it may be seen that a person in Krishna consciousness commits some act which may be taken as most abominable socially or politically. But such a temporary fall down does not disqualify him. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that if a person falls down but is wholeheartedly engaged in the transcendental service of the Supreme Lord, the Lord, being situated within his heart, purifies him and excuses him from that abomination. The material contamination is so strong that even a yogi fully engaged in the service of the Lord sometimes becomes ensnared. But Krishna consciousness is so strong that such an occasional fall down is at once rectified. Therefore, the process of devotional service is always a success. No one should deride a devotee for some accidental fall down from the ideal path. For, as explained in the next verse, such occasional fall downs will be stopped in due course, as soon as a devotee is completely situated in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, a person who is situated in Krishna consciousness and is engaged with determination in the process of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, should be considered to be in the transcendental position, even if by chance or accident he is found to have fallen. The words sadhuveva, he is saintly, are very emphatic. They are a warning to the non-devotees that because of an accidental fall down, a devotee should not be derided. He should still be considered saintly, even if he has accidentally fallen down. And the word mantavyaha is still more emphatic. If one does not follow this rule and derides a devotee for his accidental fall down, then one is disobeying the order of the Supreme Lord. Let me read that again. If one does not follow this rule and derides a devotee for his accidental fall down, then one is disobeying the order of the Supreme Lord. The only qualification of a devotee is to be unflinchingly and exclusively engaged in devotional service. In the Narsingha Purana, the following statement is given. Bhagavati cha harav ananya cheta Vrisha malinopi virajate manusaha Nahi shasha kalusha chabir kadache Timir kara bhavatam upaiti chandraha. The meaning is that even if one fully engaged in the devotional service of the Lord is sometimes found engaged in abominable activities, these activities should be considered to be like spots that resemble the mark of a rabbit on the moon. Such spots do not become an impediment to the diffusion of moonlight. Similarly, the accidental fall down of a devotee from the path of saintly character does not make him abominable. On the other hand, this is important. One should not misunderstand that a devotee in transcendental devotional service can act in all kinds of abominable ways. This verse only refers to an accident due to the strong power of material connections. Devotional service is more or less a declaration of war against the illusory energy. As long as one is not strong enough to fight the illusory energy, there may be accidental fall downs. But when one is strong enough, he is no longer subjected to such fall downs, as previously explained. No one should take advantage of this verse and commit nonsense and think that he is still a devotee. If he does not improve in his character by devotional service, then it is to be understood that he is not a high devotee. Jai Srila Prabhupada, Transcendental Purports Ki. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Tadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Sri Tapadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavascha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Samadana Tamvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Varijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Samagana Lita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaure Tvishe Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Paditana Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this is a very long but very important purport that Srila Prabhupada has given us. This verse is a very important verse, one of its kind actually, that comes in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. And the verse is actually very unique because it presents a very unique devotional principle in bhakti. And this devotional principle is the Lord's mercy and the extent of His mercy. This is a very important principle. It comes down to the fact that Krishna is so powerful that even though someone may actually be going against the principles of devotional service, yet Krishna is prepared to still give that devotee shelter, to still give that devotee comfort, and to still give that devotee mercy. And on top of that, Krishna also declares to the world that not only is this devotee under my mercy and protection, but just as importantly, everyone should consider him saintly. You see? So there are two parts to this that's very important. The first is Krishna's mercy and the extent of His mercy and why His mercy is coming. The second is how Krishna wants the world to view such a devotee. And Krishna says emphatically here that actually such a devotee is still considered to be saintly. Many years ago, His Holiness J. Advaita Maharaj, who's a senior disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and you will hear about him very often in Lilamrita, and he's very strict as a sannyasi and as a guru. J. Advaita Maharaj took a class on 9:30 many years ago in somebody's house. I don't recall which house. But he told us in that class that Srila Prabhupada had made a statement which was very important. Srila Prabhupada, when he came to this shloka and he was with a group of disciples, the devotees asked Srila Prabhupada this question because they said this verse is a bit confusing. How can someone be considered saintly if he has performed abominable action? That's the usual thing that we think, right? If someone has performed something which is very, very, not sadachara, but which is actually the opposite of sadachara, right? Api said suduchara. So how is it that such a person can become saintly? And Srila Prabhupada answered in a very amazing way. And later on, this lecture of J. Advaita Maharaj was published in a Back to Propagate magazine many years ago. And he quoted Srila Prabhupada as saying that if Brahmananda, you all know Brahmananda Maharaj, right? He was one of the pioneers of Krishna consciousness, and he together with his brother Garga Muni, they were the two brothers who served Srila Prabhupada in so many different parts of the world, in so much of capacity. And Prabhupada said that if this verse can be understood this way, if Brahmananda happened to walk down the streets of New York, right, with a cigarette in his hand, he still is to be considered saintly. This is what Srila Prabhupada said. Why? Because the amount of preaching and the amount of steady determination that Brahmananda was giving and continued to give till Srila Prabhupada left this movement, right, departed from this world, till that point, it is undeniable that his service was immense and that he was one of the great pioneers in Krishna consciousness. Of course, Brahmananda Maharaj did not walk down the streets of New York with a cigarette in his hand. But Srila Prabhupada was saying that if a great devotee could at some point or another appear to perform something which seems against Vaishnava etiquette, which seem to be different from what we would consider Vaishnava to be, we have to be very careful not to deride the devotee. This is a very important point. Sometimes, as devotees, we have the habit that we want things to be done in a certain way. And when it's not done in a certain way, then it is considered to be an aparad, or we consider it an offense. And we deride the devotee who's trying to do that service. When that happens, we are forgetting this principle of devotional service. That even though devotees may have faults, even though they may have done things according to their conditional nature, the bottom line is, if they are situated in determination, and if they are continuing what they are doing in devotional service sincerely, without stopping, continuously, they are to be considered a sadhu. This is a very important point we should remember. So, Srila Prabhupada says here, he starts the verse and he starts this purport by looking at the word sudu achara. And he says that the word sudu achara means abominable action. Now, abominable action generally will mean that an action which is disobeying the laws of God. That is what it means. If someone performs an action which goes against what Krishna has wanted, that action is considered to be abominable. That is what Prabhupada says, not only in the lecture, he has given lectures on this, but this is what he's saying actually. So this is a very important point for us to remember. Very often we may think to ourselves, why is it that in Krishna consciousness, one of the first and most important functions of a devotee is to obey the orders of the Lord, isn't it? That is what is stated. In 331, for example, of Bhagavad Gita, it is very nicely stated there that actually all of us should be following the injunctions of the Lord. And the injunctions of the Lord should be followed in such a way that there should be no envy in our hearts. Anutishtanti madavaha. If we do that, shraddhavanto anasmiyanto, without envy and with faith, then we will be liberated from the cycle of birth and death. So therefore it's very clear in 331 that we must follow the orders of Krishna. In 332, Krishna tells us in Bhagavad Gita, what happens to you when you don't follow the orders of Krishna? And there he makes it very clear that for those who don't follow it, you can look at the translation, if you don't follow and disregard the teachings, and you don't follow them regularly, then you're considered to be bereft of all knowledge, befooled, ruined in your endeavors for perfection. So the point that very often people address is, if you say that a devotee is properly situated in determination, how can he not follow the orders of God? This is where a lot of devotees have problems with the verse. But read the verse carefully. The defining change, the defining point in this verse is, a person who behaves in this way, they may perform these actions, but the motivating factor for performing these actions is actually based on envy. On envy. A devotee in this verse, what Krishna is saying in this verse is that a devotee may commit an abominable action, but he is not doing it out of envy of the Lord. There is no mention of envy. You see the point? This is a very important distinction. In 3:31 and 32, the word envy comes. And therefore, those who are envious, they don't follow Krishna. Those who are not envious, they follow Krishna. But Bhagavad Gita 9:30 talks about a different situation. In this situation, Krishna is talking about a situation where a devotee is not envious of Krishna. A devotee is very properly situated, engaged in devotional service. He's doing everything very nicely. In fact, the definition for him is that he's actually a sadhu, right? That's what he is. The word here that's used is that he is a sadhu. And if he's a sadhu, then how can he then perform abominable actions? So please, we must remember the first thing. A sadhu is not envious by nature. So this verse is not talking about envious people. It's actually talking about great devotees. And the definition of sadhu is given very nicely in Srimad Bhagavatam. Kapila Dev speaks about the definition of sadhu in 3:25-21. And there we can come to understand why the word sadhu is used in 9:30. You can see the verse. Titikshava karunika suhridda sarvadehinam ajata shatrava shantaha sadava sadhubhushanaha. See the translations, very nice. The symptoms of a sadhu are that, one, he is tolerant. So the devotee that we're talking about in 9:30 is actually very tolerant. The second quality, that devotee is always very merciful. These two qualities are very important to define sadhus. Sometimes we become devotees, but we become subtly very proud of what we think or what we know. And when someone is explaining something, what do? We don't hear that. We are not tolerant of other people's opinions. How tolerant Srila Prabhupada was. He heard so many people with so many different opinions, but he never derided them. But sometimes as devotees, when we grow in Krishna consciousness, unfortunately, we start thinking that we know everything about Krishna. And then when someone offers a point, we are not tolerant. And sometimes what happens is, because we are becoming very purified in Krishna consciousness, we are waking up for Mangalati, we may be reading Bhagavatam, but if someone is new and they are not reading, they are not chanting well, we deride them. We say, you're not up to the mark. Most of the time in all temples, right, the devotees who get the most shooting down on this are the teenagers. Always. Whether they are the girls or the boys. I just came out from a meeting the other day with the Minister of Youth in ISKCON, and he was saying it's so difficult for a devotee to be a youth in ISKCON. Because when they want to grow up normal, they have so many challenges, but the parents think they should become pure devotees overnight. And they are not willing to accept anything less. And if the children or the youngsters make mistakes, other devotees looking at them start deriding them. Oh, you're not sadhu. You're not sadhu. So therefore, sadhu is tolerant. Sadhu is merciful. And sadhu is friendly to all living beings. A sadhu has no enemies because he's not envious. He is not envious. And he's very peaceful because he has no enemies. If you have enemy, then you can't sleep. You're always thinking of your enemies. But the other thing that's really important is he's always abiding by the scriptures. He's always following the scriptures. He always reads, studies Prabhupada's books, and he's very careful. And look at the last line. His character is very sublime. In other words, a sadhu mustn't just be talking about Bhagavatam. They should be walking Bhagavatams. They should behave in such a way that they are very broad-hearted, broad-minded, tolerant of all living entities, merciful, kind. That is sadhu. Not having ideas that this person is not up to the mark, that person doesn't have that, this person's devotional service is not correct, this is not good. That is not sadhu. So please remember, in this shloka, the word sadhu is used to define that actually a devotee may commit an abominable action. But if the devotee has all these qualities, that devotee is considered to be sadhu. Do you follow? It's very important, right? Very important. So now the next question is, if that is the case, how does a sadhu end up performing an abominable action? That's the next question, isn't it? Now Prabhupada's purport answers that. In Prabhupada's purport, Prabhupada says that there are two different levels for the entities to behave in, two different activities, right? One activity is conditional, and the other activity is constitutional. Easy, two C's. So all of us, right, we all have a conditional side to us, and we have a constitutional side to us. This is a very important point. I remember my Guru Maharaj telling me, when you take up Krishna consciousness, you are like a plane shooting off into the sky. At that point of time, your constitutional position is very powerful. Because suddenly Krishna consciousness comes into your life, suddenly you become very excited and you do everything very nicely. First 1-2 years, most devotees are super devotees. Then Maharaj told me, third year, Devaki, everything will change. Third year, you lose, your flight will lose some steam. And then flight will run into turbulence. And in that turbulence, suddenly you realize that I also have a conditional side to me. And the conditional side has not gone yet. It's there. Why? Because for life after life after life, we have been conditioned by material nature. We have been. So you see, Srila Prabhupada's purport is super excellent. Because Prabhupada says, everyone has two sides to them. Their primary nature is constitutional. But because we have been in this world for life after life, we struggle, karshati. We are struggling in this world with our mind and our senses. Why then does Krishna state this in the Bhagavad Gita? He says that. He says the living entity is actually part and parcel of me. But due to conditional nature, they are struggling with their mind and their senses. This is what he says. So therefore, we must first of all accept that all of us are conditioned. But we are trying to come to our constitutional position. Now this devotee in this verse is a sadhu. He's following the devotional service very nicely. He's chanting his rounds, he's reading, he's studying Srila Prabhupada's books, he's coming to the temple and serving, all is there. And he's also working. Now Prabhupada says if you are working in this world, if you have some duties in this world apart from Krishna consciousness, it is very natural that those duties will be conditional. In other words, they will condition your thinking. It happens. It always happens. You will notice that when we go to work, no matter what we say, our consciousness is very good and all, at work only we are always tested. Isn't it so? Right? We're always tested there. Unless in your house you're getting scolding from your wife, or wife is scolding husband, then conditioned existence also is happening at home. But if not, very often at work you will feel it. Prabhupada writes in the purport here that the conditional existence of a devotee can sometimes also be found in social or political situations. And the best example I can think of political situation, right, and conditional nature is Bhishma Dev. Bhishma Dev is Mahajan. And yet, how many times people around the world have found fault with Bhishma Dev? Why didn't he help Draupadi when she was being disrobed? Why did he fight on the side of the Kauravas until the 10th day of the Mahabharata? You say he's Mahajan, but whose side was he on? He was on the Kauravas side. Isn't that an abominable action? People can say that, isn't it? So Prabhupada is saying here, Prabhu, I think we have to move forward. Sorry, we have to come all the way. Let's move forward. And you know, moving forward also means this 2 rows can become easily 4 rows. Yeah, you know, we are Indians, we can squeeze. Yes, we can squeeze. I always think of our trains in India. Huh? Indian trains, exactly. Sudha Prabhu is saying that, isn't it? When we don't have reservations on Indian trains, what do? We squeeze, we push, we kick, we do anything just to get in, isn't it? That's the best way to do it. Maharaj used to tell me that, you know, Devaki, one thing you must be very careful when you get on these unreserved trains and buses, right, are all the armpits which are exposed by people who are holding the rails. Maharaj told me, you just be careful. This, like first 2 times when I came to India, Maharaj said nothing will make you faint. The only thing that will make you faint is when you get on one of these buses and stand next to somebody's armpit, and then you will go into some yoga nidra. That's what will happen. So that's the train. It all came because I asked her to squeeze, isn't it? Yeah, okay. So you see, so Bhishma Dev, for example, was a very good example. Bhishma Dev, right, can be easily seen to be a person who was conditioned. For so many years, he had to be in the middle of all politics. So much of politics. And yet, Bhagavatam declares him to be Mahajan. He's a Mahajan. Why? Go back to the definition of sadhu. When we go back to the definition of sadhu, that definition will guide us in being very careful about judging a devotee. If a devotee has all these qualities, and you can tell the qualities of a devotee, isn't it true? We don't need to go for seminars for someone to tell us how a devotee behaves. When a devotee comes before us and talks to us, we know if the devotee is sadhu or not. Are they tolerant to us? Are they shouting at us? Are they fighting with us? Are they peaceful with us? All this will make us understand whether they are sadhus or not. You see? So then if they make some mistakes anywhere, it is because of conditional nature. But even then, think about it. Despite the fact that Bhishma Dev was put into such politics and social issues, at the end of the time, on the 10th day of the Mahabharata war when he fell, what did he do? Did he still think about politics? Did he still think about conditional things? No. He immediately invested all his heart, all his mind, all his body, everything. He invested it, all his thinking, his feeling and his willing. What is that verse? 1932 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Iti matir upakalpita vritishna bhagavati sarva tapungave vibhumi swasukham upagate kvachid vihartum prakritim upeyushiyat bhava pravaha. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The shloka Bhishma Dev tells us what a great devotee Bhishma Dev was. See his point. He says so nicely, let me now invest my thinking, feeling and willing, which was so long engaged in different subjects and occupational duties, in the all-powerful Lord Sri Krishna. He's always self-satisfied, but sometimes being the leader of the devotees, he enjoys transcendental pleasure by descending to the material world, although from him only the material world is created. How nice, right? So we should understand the word sadhu carefully. And Srila Prabhupada says so nicely in this point, I'm looking at the purport, that actually that we have always two activities. And then Prabhupada says sometimes we are lucky if the activities are not opposed to each other. So sometimes your work and the mood in your work is very aligned to your devotional service. Maybe you're doing a work where you find that it is not disrupting to your devotional service. That's very good for you. But sometimes it could be that your work may be directly opposed to what you're doing in devotional service. That can sometimes be difficult. I know many years ago, there was one devotee, and he used to come for our programs when we were very long time in the days of the small temple. The problem was he was in the fish canning business. So he was working for a company that was canning fish. And he was very, very paka in chanting and everything. But every time when he went and he was involved in the process, he felt very disturbed. And he felt it was a very abominable activity, you see. But what could he do? So I remember he came to see my Guru Maharaj. And he said, Maharaj, what can I do now? Should I stop my work? So Maharaj asked him, do you have an alternative, for example? And he said, no alternative for the moment. Then Maharaj told him, in Bhagavatam, in one of Vasudev's discussions with Nanda Maharaj when they met, Vasudev gives a very nice advice. He says, when a worm is about to move from one flower to the other flower, how does the worm move? It extends itself in such a way that it touches that flower first to feel whether the flower is alright. If it is stable, then the worm moves to the next flower. So in the same way, our conditional activities sometimes may be opposed to our devotional activities. But we have to subsist in the world. Before we can make that move, we should not do it prematurely. We should do it in such a way that we have the alternative arrangement so that our continuous flow of Lakshmi is not disrupted. You see? So Prabhupada says here that generally speaking, a devotee is cautious. A devotee is very cautious that he does not do anything that could disrupt his wholesome condition. We try our best not to disrupt our wholesome condition. But it's not always possible, Prabhus and Matajis. You know that. Why am I looking so far? I'm a lawyer. It's the worst possible profession to be in. It is diametrically opposed to Krishna consciousness. You are fighting with everyone. The day starts fighting. If you become a lawyer who's a sadhu, you're not a lawyer. So mine is it's completely opposed to it, you see. So therefore, there will always be a situation when you cannot. So Maharaj told him, you chant and be situated in the determination to follow Krishna's laws and continue the devotional service. And every day you pray to Krishna, Krishna, let me come out of this business, let me find opportunities for a business which does not have this. And within 2 weeks of his chanting, he managed to go to a business where they were canning fruits. You know the fruit canning business, they have fruits, they have some, syrup and all. Something is better than nothing, isn't it? At least he was still in the canning business, but he was not canning fishes anymore. He was canning fruits. So he called Maharaj and he thanked him. And Maharaj told him one very nice point. Maharaj told him that Maharaj made him read 9:30. And he said, do you know what saved you? What saved you was the last 3 words or last 4 words in the verse. Situated in his determination. That is what will save us, even if we have abominable activities. The more the devotee is determined, despite all the conditioning, he is determined to be a devotee, Krishna will find a way out for him. He will. Who's a great example in Bhagavatam? Vritrasura. What was Vritrasur's conditioning actually? Bhagavatam tells us his conditioning was that of a demon. Isn't it true? He was born out of the anger of Twashta, his father, because his brother Vishwakarma was killed. Vishwarupa was killed. Imagine. So he did not come in a sadhu mood. He did not come on the battlefield. I must be tolerant of the devatas. I must be merciful to them. Never mind, you can shoot all the arrows. I will just be merciful. He did not go and talk to the devatas and say, I'm friendly with you now. He didn't do all this. He came on the battlefield because he had to fight and slay and vanquish all the devatas. That is about the greatest conditioning a devotee has to face. But despite his conditioned nature, it is very important that Vritrasura did not forget his constitutional nature. Aham hare tavapadai kamula dasanudaso bhavitasmi bhuyaha manasmareta supate gunamste granitava karma utukayaha nanaka prishtam nachaparameshtam न सर्वभौमं न रसाधिपत्यं न योगसिद्धिर् अपुनर्भवं वा समञ्जसर्वा विरहाय कंशे अजातपक्षा इव मातरं खगाः स्तन्यं यतावत् शकराशुरार्तः प्रियं प्रियेव व्युसितं विषण्णा मनोरविन्दाक्षहृदेक्षते त्वं ममोत्तमश्लोक जनेषु सत्यं संसारचक्रे भ्रमता स्वकर्मभिः त्वन्माययात्मा मजदारगेषु आसक्तचित्तस्य तनाथ भूया. What beautiful verses. You all know these verses so well, you know. And what is he praying? He's praying that in all situations, I don't want anything but the opportunity to serve Krishna. I long for the sadhu sangha of the devotees, to serve the devotees, because the devotees are always remembering Krishna with their words, with their hearts, and with their deeds. Then he says, just like baby birds, they are waiting for their mother to come. Just like a wife waits for the husband to come back to satisfy her. Just like a cow, the calves of a cow, right, eagerly comes to find its mother, to find the milk. In the same way, my Lord, let me always be drawn without any other deviations to you. So Vritasur amplified one aspect of devotional service that saved his conditional nature. And that word is found in today's shloka, 9:13. The word is Ananya Bhak. That's the next word we have to look at. We've looked at sadhu, we've looked at abominable action, but now we must look at Ananya Bhak. Right? The word Ananya Bhak, what does it say here? Without deviation. Now, do you see it in the translation? No. Remember, I was telling you all how we shared to you how important it is to read the word-to-word transliteration. If you don't read the word-to-word and study Srila Prabhupada's book carefully, you will miss this most important principle. If you have heard Prabhupada's lectures on 9:13, he speaks voluminously on Ananya Bhav. Yet it's not in the translation. Because he says Ananya Bhav is the principle of what defines a sadhu devotee. That is very important. In one lecture, Prabhupada famously said, in this lecture, he said, what is it that makes a devotee, right, saintly? And Prabhupada said, even if he had no saintly qualities, the fact that he's a devotee is that he is saintly. Amazing, isn't it? Prabhupada says the fact that he's just a devotee, he's chanting Krishna's name, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. He's saintly. He's saintly. So if that devotee is saintly and if there's some accidental conditional problems, don't deride him. This is a very important point. Don't deride him, don't criticize him, don't find fault, don't judge. Very, very important. Very important. So Ananya Bhav means without deviation. And you will notice all very consistently, Bhishma Dev was in a very difficult situation conditionally. But he was undeviated in his devotional service. Isn't it true? Otherwise, if he was not a devotee, could he have laid on a bed of arrows for so many days, remembering Krishna? You imagine if we were put on a bed of arrows. We'd just be doing, that's all. No Bhagavatam will come out, isn't it? Nothing will come out. But he was just chanting Bhagavatam. That's what he was doing. Look at Vritasur. Vritasur was born in the most conditional of states. But he was a devotee at heart. Why? Because in his previous birth, he was not Vritasur. What was he before? He was Chitraketu. And as Chitraketu Maharaj, he had developed his devotional service. And that is the next point of Ananya Bhak. Those who are not deviated in devotional service, they are not deviated because they have been performing devotional service consistently and in a determined fashion. Chitraketu Maharaj, whatever you may say, yes, he was a bit intolerant of Parvati Mata and he was cursed. But like a true sadhu, he accepted his curse. He accepted. Parikshit Maharaj should not have put a garland of dead snakes. Yet the moment he did that, he accepted, it's my fault. I should not have done that. That is sadhu. That is sadhu. Sadhu doesn't want to be caught up in I'm wrong, you are right, I'm wrong. We can continue talking about that, but in that discussion, Krishna is forgotten. The sadhu says, it is my fault, now let me continue ananya bhak. Let me do devotional service without deviation. This is ananya bhak. Another good example is the fall down of Bharat Maharaj. You all remember, Bharat Maharaj was such a great exalted devotee, wanted to leave everything, his kingdom and everything, to go to the forest. And there he was supposed to meditate on Krishna. What did he end up meditating on? A deer. Right? The deer became like a son to him. To the point when if the deer was not around, he was thinking, where's the deer? Did the lion eat the deer? Did the deer fall somewhere? He was so worried, just like parents are worried about children, he was worried about the deer. And at the point when the deer was, when Bharat Maharaj was going to leave his body, who was sitting down like a sadhu next to him? The deer. And holding his hand some more. And Bharat Maharaj remembered the deer, and he became a deer in the next life. Right? He became a deer in the next life. That's why we have a saying, if you're very attached to your wife, then you'll become a sari in your next life. And you're very attached to your husband, then you'll become dhoti in your next life. Right? That's the Krishna conscious point. But the point is, whatever you see, and whatever you become conditioned to accept, that becomes what you become. So he became a deer. And once he became a deer, even though he became a deer, even though an abominable action is defined as disobeying the laws of God, and he should have obeyed the laws of God as a devotee to remember Krishna, but he stopped his performance of sacrifices, he neglected his devotional service. But even then, Krishna is so kind, Krishna's mercy is so great, that Krishna gave the deer, Bharat Maharaj the deer, remembrance of his previous life and remembrance of who he is now. So he knew I'd become a deer and what happened to me before. So he became a sadhu deer. Okay? He was a real sadhu. He stayed away from all the other deers. And he just concentrated on devotional service and he stayed around the sadhus. And at the end of his life, he became the great Jadabharat. And then he attained perfection of existence. So, this is another example given in Bhagavatam, that sometimes a devotee may have an accidental fall down. Prabhupada uses that word. So abominable action is used in the translation. But in the purport, Prabhupada elaborates on that by saying that abominable action very often comes because of an accidental fall down. Accidental fall down. An accidental fall down can be for a sustained period of time because the person is conditioned. Another example that's given is actually the example of Ajamil. Ajamil was a great devotee of the Lord when he was very young. He was Pakka Brahmachari. He was worshipping Narayana Shila. Doesn't get better than that. And yet, one moment of seeing a Shudrani and Shudra embracing alone in the forest was enough to waver his mind. The conditioned aspect overpowered his constitutional aspect. And there was an accidental fall down. But this accidental fall down lasted for almost 50 years of his life. To the point when he was 80. And his son, little, what was his name? Narayana. Little Narayana was moving around. And he was a very small boy. And Ajamil was 80 or 88 years old, Shastras tell us. And so when he thought that his death was approaching, somehow or another by Krishna's mercy, he chanted Narayana. But he didn't chant Narayana to call out that Narayana. He called the little Narayana. He didn't want to call Narayana, right? But he called the word Narayana anyway. And Krishna said, you know what, I'm a very liberal teacher. You know, some teachers mark very strictly, right? Oh, you meant Narayana, but not the other one. Wrong. But Krishna said, oh, you meant differently, but it's same word, right? Accept it. That's what he did. That's what he did. And so Krishna allowed Ajamil the opportunity to change himself. Ajamil didn't become liberated the moment he chanted Narayana. No. What happened was, he got the sadhu sangha of the Vishnudutas. And they came and they spoke up and argued against Yamadutas. Yamadutas went back all confused. Right? But Vishnuduta saved Ajamil. And Ajamil now had another opportunity to rectify his accidental fall down. And because of the sadhu sangha of the devotees, his constitutional nature overpowered his conditional nature. And so he went to the Himalayas. He did severe devotional austerities and powerful devotional service. And at the point when he was going to leave the world, Nanda and Sunanda came. They were also there first round. Now they came for the final round with the heavenlies. They came with the Vahana. And at that point of time, Ajamil very happily got on board. No Yamadutas, no Yamaraj. In fact, Prabhupada says in a lecture that even if a devotee has an accidental fall down, still Yamaraj is very quick to warn his servants that actually you should not touch such a devotee. Even then you should not touch a devotee. That's what actually is stated in the 6th canto, 3rd chapter. I know it's the 6th canto, 3rd chapter. I'm just trying to remember the shloka. I think it is 6.3. I think it's 27.28. Let's try 27.28. It is Te Deva Siddha Parigita Pavitra Ghata. That's the shloka, Prabhu. Is it there? It's there. Let's chant it together. Te Deva Siddha Parigita Pavitra Gatha Ye Sadava Samadrisho Bhagavat Prapannaha Tanno Pasida Hare Gadaya Bhiguptan Naishamayam Nachavaya Prabhavamadande. So this is from Yamaraj to Yamadutas. Now see what he says. My dear servants, please do not approach such devotees, for they have fully surrendered to the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They are equal to everyone, and their narrations are sung by the demigods and the inhabitants of Siddha Loka. Please do not even go near them. See, don't even go near them. They are always protected by the club of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore Lord Brahma and I, and even the time factor, are not competent to chastise them. Now, to really understand this point, Prabhu, go to the verse just before this, and everything will become complete. Bhagavatam is so amazing, because in this one he says, please don't go to such devotees. So now look at what he means by this. This is the other verse. Let's look at the translation. Considering all these points, therefore, intelligent men decide to solve all problems by adopting the devotional service of chanting the holy name of the Lord, who is situated in everyone's heart and who is a mind of all auspicious qualities. This is important now. Such persons are not within my jurisdiction for punishment. Now listen here. Generally, they never commit sinful activities, but even if by mistake or because of bewilderment or illusion, they sometimes commit sinful acts. They are protected from sinful reactions because they always chant the Hare Krishna mantra. Isn't it very clear, Prabhus and Matajis? So you put this shloka today, you add this and the verse before this, and you understand the meaning of Ananya Bhav, you will see now what we are talking about and what Krishna is saying. You will get to understand that it is possible that a devotee may be very pure, but may not be perfect. Please remember this. There is a difference between purity and perfection. Perfection is material. Purity is spiritual. Someone can be very pure, but because of some actions of bewilderment, like Ajamil, like Vritasur, right? Like Bharat Maharaj. But eventually, their trajectory was always to perfect their devotion service. You know why? Because even though they were committing these activities, they never stopped their devotion service. They kept increasing it. They counted it because they had faith in devotion service. Ananya Bhav means without deviation. You cannot perform bhakti without deviation until you have strong Shraddha. Am I right? Think about it. Until you have strong Shraddha in Jagannath, you will not be able to perform uninterrupted and unreserved bhakti. This is a very important point. And this is the greatness of devotees. Which is why, finally, there is one verse that Srila Prabhupada makes reference to in this purport. He says in the Srimad Bhagavatam, he says that. So which verse is that? It's 11.5.42, another very famous verse. Swapadamulam, that's the verse here. Now with this verse we will end our time together. But I think it's a very important verse to chant. Swapadamulam bhajata priyasya tyaktamya bhavasya hare pareshah vikarma yachot patitam katanche dhunoti sarvam hridhi sannivishtaha. Isn't Bhagavatam very beautiful? It's so nice to chant, isn't it? Chant again. Let's chant again. Swapadamulam bhajata priyasya tyakyamya bhavasya hare pareshah vikarma yacho patitam katanche dhunoti sarvam hridhi sannivishtaha. Now even in this, supposing I'm chanting like a Sanskrit scholar, very, very perfect. My dots, my long R's, everything is perfect. Right? Now someone is chanting, and they can't chant properly, the long R's are off, everything is wrong, but they are chanting every day, they are reading, they are doing devotional service. Don't deride them. Don't deride them. Because we may be externally looking very pakka, but that's our conditional state of trying to become perfect. But a devotee who performs devotional service, he is looking to purify his existence, not to perfect his existence. There is a difference between purity and perfection. 90% of the time, we want perfection. I want the altar to be perfectly put. But what if a devotee doesn't have the capacity to be perfect? But his love for Krishna is so wonderful that Krishna accepts his imperfection. Do you not think that devotee is Ananya Bhak? Isn't it so? It must be so. There are so many devotees in the world who may not be the best cooks, the best class givers, or the best sweepers, but they are constantly trying their level of best to serve Krishna. That is purity, not perfection. That is constitution, not condition. You see the difference? So, it is very important for our congregation to change this culture. Because otherwise, Prabhupada writes in the purport, non-devotees very often deride such individuals who accidentally fall down. But in our society, we are finding now that devotees deride devotees because they seem to be falling down. Oh Prabhu, I saw him smoking outside. That's it. He's finished. Oh Prabhu, I saw her with another boy and it looked like it's her boyfriend. She's a fallen soul. Oh Prabhu, he came into the house without proper tilak, He's not a good devotee. Oh, the other day, I saw him outside. He was sitting in the restaurant. He's highly fallen. Like that, we always have these trajectories in our mind, isn't it? We're just looking for something. If we can find something wrong with the person, Haribol. That makes us feel like, we are very good devotees, isn't it? But that's not the way. That's not the way. You know why that's not the way? Because of this shloka. Look at the translation, and we end with this super translation. One who has thus given up all other engagements and has taken full shelter at the lotus feet of Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is very dear to the Lord. Indeed, if such a surrendered soul accidentally commits some sinful activity, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is seated within everyone's heart, immediately takes away the reaction to such sin. Isn't this very clear? Now look at the purport. In the purport, the Prabhupada's disciples have written very nicely this point. Now in this verse, it is revealed that devotional service is so pure and potent that a surrendered devotee of the Lord has no need to perform other purificatory processes. This is very important. We don't have to jump into some river or throw something on our head. We just have to keep chanting. Can you go down a bit, Prabhu? Since devotional service is itself the most purifying process, a sincere devotee who has accidentally stumbled on the path should immediately resume his pure devotional service. That's the point. Even if there is some mistake we have made, don't be discouraged. Continue with full velocity. Tivrena bhakti yogena. Continue your devotional service. Have faith in Krishna. Sometimes there's an argument that actually all the laws of Krishna are found in Vedas. They are found in Bhagavad Gita. So if a devotee accidentally breaks them and he continues because of conditional nature, then he is disobeying the orders of the Lord. So he should then be punished. That is true. But in this shloka, there is one word our acharyas tell us that makes the difference. The word is priyasya. Isn't it, Prabhu? There's priyasya, right? At the top. Sorry. I'm going up to the actual shloka. The actual shloka. You see the word priyasya, isn't it? Bhajata priyasya. Priyasya means very dear to Krishna. So our acharyas say, Krishna is like a very kind father. Okay, you broke a rule, but you're very dear to me. Continue your devotional service, and I will absolve you of your sin. This is Priya. No other personality in this world will do this for us. And as devotees, we must learn to do this to others. That will please Krishna. This word priyasya is only used for Krishna. No other devata in any other Puranas will have the word priyasya or bhajasya. These two words are never used. They are only specifically used for Krishna. Because only He has this quality that will allow us to continue in devotional service despite our imperfections. So Krishna is looking for purity. Sorry, Guru, can we just go down to that point and then we'll end? So we are here, right? Yes. Accidentally stumbled on the path, and the Lord will protect him. There you go. The path should immediately resume his pure devotional service at the lotus feet of the Lord. And thus the Lord will protect him. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, guess what? 9:30. Right? And the verse is quoted here. And look at this other point here. The word Tyaktana Bhavasya in this verse, Swapada Mula verse, is very important. Because for a devotee, even if he has an accidental fall down, he doesn't go to Brahma, Vishnu or anyone. He doesn't say, oh no, I can't see Krishna. Let me go to someone else. He doesn't. He will go back to his father. And he will say, my dear father, I have this conditional mood where I'm always getting angry, for example. Or I'm always scolding. Or I'm always, addicted to maybe drugs. Or maybe I'm addicted to alcohol. I want to give it up, Krishna. Please help me. I will not stop my devotional service. I will continue. Such a devotee will get the mercy of Krishna. He will get the mercy of Krishna. Very, very important. But we must end with the last paragraph of Srila Prabhupada's purport in this verse today. Why? Because Prabhupada says in this last shloka, on the last paragraph, don't misunderstand and use this verse and decide tomorrow or today after the program, I can break all the regulated principles, and then if anybody asks me what happens, Prabhu, read 9:30. And you should do puja to me because I'm sadhu. I'm still a sadhu, right? No. Prabhupada says don't do this kind of nonsense. We cannot deliberately do it, but we may be helplessly doing it. Those of us who have been experienced or have been exposed to how addiction is, if you do prison counseling and all, you see how people become addicted. Like in my line of work, I've seen drug addicts. They have tried for years to get off the drugs, but they can't. But in the prison, they keep chanting. They keep chanting. And after a few years, they come out. They get good job. They come to our center. They have become devotees. They have become devotees. They have conquered the conditional part of their life because Krishna is priyasya and they perform bhajasya. This is how they have come out of it. They never wanted to do it, but it had become a habit for them. So actually, this is the greatness of Krishna. If Krishna can forgive Putana, who came to kill him, then why will he not forgive us and help us who are trying very hard to become Krishna conscious? Why will he desert us? Why will he throw us away? So please remember, every time we use the word priyasya, it is not an ordinary word. It is a word full of meaning. It embodies the absolute mercy of Krishna. And this is what we should remember. Today is His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj's appearance day. Am I right, Prabhu? The Tithi? It's the Vyas Puja, right? Huh? Date-wise, right? Tithi was not today. It was last week. Okay, so it's his day. I want to end today because I had a first-hand experience with Maharaj on 9:30. And I think it's a perfect way to glorify him. I can't name names, right? Because there were devotees concerned. There was a devotee who had given his whole life to the movement. And somehow or another there was an accidental fall down on his part. I had to bring this news up to Radhanath Maharaj because it's part of my GBC duty to do it. And Radhanath Maharaj called the devotee and I was on the call. And the moment Maharaj came on the call, the devotee just simply broke down. And the devotee, felt very bad and very painful that he had to be in this condition. Maharaj told him something very nice. He said, when you take up Krishna consciousness, you are declaring war against the illusory energy of Maya. Isn't that in our purport today? It's there. You are declaring war on Maya. Do not expect Maya not to declare war on you. Maya will declare war on you. And the more you are situated in devotional service, and the more you are bringing souls to Krishna and away from Maya, the more Maya is going to fight you. So, this is just an arrow that has inflicted some damage on your shield. You're on the battlefield, you're wearing a shield, armor, and this is an arrow. Take out the arrow and continue your battle, and all will be well. And today the devotee is so well situated, and the devotee is making many, many other living entities into devotees. All because of the priyasya and the sweet love that Radhanath Maharaj gave him. At the most difficult hour of his need, Maharaj embodied the principle that Krishna has given us. All glories to His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj. All glories to Bhagavad Gita as it is. All glories to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. And all glories to all the assembled Vaishnavas. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki. Are there questions? Yes, Prabhu. Maybe we use the mic. Just a minute, Prabhu. This is a very interesting verse, so I expect a lot of questions. It'll be fun to have questions. Yes. Okay, wait. Prabhu, devotee before you, and then. No, don't worry. You're both sadhus.
Hare Krishna, Guru. Hare Krishna. So thank you, Guru, for wonderful class. So in one of the verse you quoted about Bhishma Dev, he's trying to remember Krishna by feeling, willing, and thinking.
Yes.
But in today's world, okay, we are working, somewhere.
Yes.
All are working, and in the workplace, sometimes they are talking about some other things, material things, bullshit things, apart from the work, and we have to sit with them. So at that time, okay, how to remember, how do we feel about Krishna? How do we think about Krishna? And how do we will about Krishna? Because we have to sit with them because we are working with them.
Good point, Guru. Frankly speaking, sometimes you have no choice but to sit with them. If you don't, you become isolated. I've met many devotees who end up so isolated that they don't progress in their working world, in their working life. That's not good also. But Prabhu, if you're performing devotional service well, if you're properly situated, if you're determined to do it, if your sadhana is good in the morning, my experience is no matter what people are talking, and you have to be with them, these things will not affect us. They just come and go. Because we know it's in their conditioned nature to speak about these things. We hear them, we tolerate. Sadhu means tolerate, isn't it? But we give them our association. That is also a quality of sadhu, to be merciful. And we are friendly with them. We are not, so friendly to a point where we forget who we are. But we are friendly enough so that they become inspired in our association. So my understanding is, If a devotee is really performing devotional service nicely, then devotional service will protect him in any of these conditional situations. I have to go to court and I have to fight a court case for a whole day, right? There's no possibility. In between, I may be chanting some verses subconsciously, or if I see the judge is really bad, I start chanting Nrsimhadev prayers. But apart from that, I have to concentrate on the points of the arguments, right? But by doing that properly, that has become my devotional service. And therefore Krishna protects. Sometimes we are in the business of networking, marketing. We have to talk to all kinds of different people, right? We have to talk and talk and talk until finally they sign the deal, what to do. But that's part of your dharma. You have to perform your duty. But if your devotional service is strong, it will not affect you. What will really be a problem is when you get into situations where you are like the fish canning business of my dear old friend. That was a problem, Like for example, you become a waiter in a restaurant, part-time, but you are serving meat. You're becoming part of a process which actually will cause difficulty to your devotional service. That becomes a difficulty. But in any normal, decent job, you have to talk to people. You have to interact with people. But be steady in your devotional service. That's all. Remember the monkey and the crocodile? And how the monkey kept the heart in the tree? Prabhupada told us we have to move everywhere, but our heart has to be with Krishna. Is that helpful, Prabhu? Thank you. Tulsi Chandra Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thanks for the wonderful class, especially with a lot of practical tips. My question is, Prabhu, as you mentioned, we sometimes we can forgive others faults easily, but especially I've seen from my case, if it's by near and dear ones, as you mentioned, we don't forgive our kids, so we tend to find faults.
Yes.
Maybe with our wife or kids. How we can be liberally to them? Because
very good question. Prabhu's point is very important. Sometimes we are very sadhu with people who are not in the family, right? But when we are with our family members, we are asuras. We are not sadhus, we are asuras actually. And that can be a problem because we find so much fault with those who are near and dear. But we are very sadhu with everybody else. So the world is talking nicely about us, but the wife or the husband is saying, my God, you don't know how he is at home. Right? That's the whole problem actually. Now, there is only one way to solve that. And it comes back to the basis of Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. The problem there is, we are always considering those near and dear as our property. And that is the mistake of conditional existence. If we understand them from a constitutional existence, Prabhu, and we apply the purport, then we'll understand that they are sent to us for us to serve them. They are not near and dear, but they are sent to us as Krishna's arrangement for us to serve them. So we are not proprietary by nature, but we are service-oriented by nature. It will change the way we see our family. It will make us tolerant of them. It will make us become more priyasya towards them also. But the moment we think they are our properties, and that we have to dictate to them what to do, what not to do, because it's our business, then that proprietorship will become a big problem. Because we become conditioned by our familial connections. Is that helpful, Prabhu? So I remember when I spoke to Maharaj, we should not, there's a verse in 7.13.42. 7.13.42 says, everyone has a different mentality. Naham ninde nachastami. Right? Where is that? Srinivasa Prabhu is amazing. What will we do without Srinivasa Prabhu or Dhananjaya Prabhu? They are just amazing. Prabhu, just move up a bit. I want to just show them. Yeah, you see this, huh? You just go up a bit. Translation. Yes. Different people have different mentalities. Therefore, it is not my business either to praise them or to blaspheme them. So I asked my Guru Maharaj this question. Maharaj, if I can't praise them, which is what we try to do, Prabhu, wonderful class. I just praised you, right? I can't blaspheme, Prabhu, hopeless class. We won't say that. So then what do I say? If I can't praise people and I can't blaspheme them, what do I do with them? And Maharaj told me, very simple. You serve them. You don't praise them. You don't blaspheme them. You serve them. Serve them. Right? Serve them to the best of your ability. And that's what we have to do with our family. If we ever consider our family to be proprietary in nature, we will have so much problems. I agree with you. So much bonds. But it's not easy. Because our conditional nature manifests most with our family members actually. Isn't it true? Our real, Swarup, our eternal Swarup in this world is very nicely manifested within the four walls of our houses actually. It is true. Thank you, Prabhu. Any other points? Okay, one more question from Janani Mataji. Okay, wait, can we have a few minutes, Prabhu? Are we okay? Okay. Because Pujari is standing there, I'm getting nervous. Prabhu, you okay, yeah? Okay, fine. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yes.
Just a follow-up on Tulsi Sharan Prabhu's questions. How exactly do we serve them? Let's say, do we let them be to slowly realize it themselves? Or do we try to help them within our means? Or maybe if it's harming us or shaking our own faith in Krishna consciousness, do we distance? How exactly
Very good point.
do we serve?
I think that the way we serve is not as important as the fact that we start understanding that how we interact with them is on the basis of service. That's the starting point. For example, I have my mother, right? My mother is very stubborn, she's cooking, but she's getting old, right? And you tell her, don't do it. And yet she continues. Then you get fed up with her, and you scold her, she scolds you, and then everybody becomes unhappy. It happens sometimes, right? But if you want to serve her, then you can say, look, instead of you cooking, I'll help you. But there's only a limit to what they will hear you. So one part of the process of service is also humility to accept that they will not always hear you. They will not. If they always were to hear you, that's wonderful. A family that hears each other is a perfect family. You're all shaking your heads now, isn't it? You know it. Nobody hears anybody in a family. Most families are chaotic. For a while, when the children are 3 and 4, you tell them sit, they will sit. But nowadays, even 3 and 4, they don't sit. They'll tell you to sit. So actually, Janani, your point is correct. The best we can do is to maintain a sadhu mentality. Be tolerant of their conditioning, be tolerant of their constitution. Everybody has their own natures. And you know something, when people become older, sometimes their natures become pronounced. Instead of becoming less, sometimes if they were grouchy when they are young, by the time they reach 50, they are grumpy like anything. As it happened, we see sometimes, Or if we are very calm when we are young, by the time we are 50 years old, we are comatose. We are not patient, but we are comatose. It's like that sometimes. But we have to accept that everyone has their nature. So there's a lot of adjustment to be involved. We can try, but ultimately, it is between them and Krishna. We can try. Is that helpful? It's a very organic thing. But when a devotee realizes, my mother doesn't belong to me, I will serve her to the best of my ability, but the rest is up to Krishna, then you don't feel so distressed. But if you think, this is my mother, I'm going to do something about it, then you become distressed. Isn't it true? Just like, this is my husband, this is my wife, my son, then it becomes a problem. I hope that's helpful. Mahesh Prabhu, you had your hand up.
Hare Krishna
Hare
Prabhu.
Bol, Prabhu.
Today's verse, Prabhu 9:30, I think has re-emphasized what we always used to hear from our elders in family. Especially once I remember my father's elder brother, I went to native place and I was asking, what kept you, I was quite young actually that point in time, child actually, so I asked him, what kept you sane throughout life, pure, sane,
Yes.
what kept you? So he said, my Guru Maharaj used to tell me, never forget chanting the holy names of Lord. So he said, I think you keep that throughout life, I think that will kept you, pure and.
So that is being properly situated in determination.
Absolutely. So I think that re-emphasized today's verse. I think re-emphasized that point. So never forget chanting the
Never
holy names of
forget.
Lord. Yeah.
Very true. I'm so glad you brought that up. All these accidental fall downs are like rocks in a river. They will come, but the river finds a way around it, isn't it? Always finds a river, a way. Gange Vauham Udanvati. Our devotional service must always find a way around every obstacle that comes. Never stop your determination, and Krishna will facilitate. Thank you so much. We must end here. Let's have Gora Arti. Oh, Navagaura Prabhu, because you cooked a big feast for us, please ask the question.
Sorry,
Thank you.
Sorry. The question probably here, one thing is we have heard about a story called where Romaharsha Sutta is sitting on the Vyasasana and then is killed by Balramji for an offense of not